pressure continues to mount for government to communicate a clear message about the damage and the action to be taken on banks that were involved in the currency manipulation saga. Now, government institutions have been accused of either playing it down or passing the buck. The South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago has said the question should not be directed to the SARB, but to the Competition Commission. Meanwhile, the National Treasury said that there was no official available for this interview. But our guests this morning are Redge Nkosi, who's the Executive Director and Research Head for Money, Banking and Macroeconomics at Firstsource Money, as well as Tshepo Kgadima, an Economic and Energy Analyst. And they both join us virtually this morning. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live. Redge, if I could start with you. Now, in an article that you wrote, you say that the issues are on two main debates here. The first is on the fairness or rather the unfairness of the imposed fine for admission of guilt. And the second issue is about the damage that such malpractices inflict on society and the economy generally. Please elaborate on that for us.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is that right across since this issue started, the country has been debating whether the fines are good or not, or they're substantial or not. And the next debate is really, what is the cost to the economy? You know, this thing started in 2001 and continues now. How much damage has that caused to the economy? Well, those are important issues, certainly. But I think what we should also be addressing, in my view, is the fact that these policies that allow us or the country to have a currency that is free and can easily be manipulated by the outside forces, frankly, is a policy that has to be revisited. And that's permanent, not just how much you're going to charge Standard Chartered Bank or any other corporate in this matter. And while that is useful, it's just a short-term measure. In my view, we should be digging deeper into the causes, the root causes of this manipulation and where it's likely to take us going into the future. And frankly, it lies within the policy space. The policy space, monetary policy space in this country.
Now, Tshepo, the manipulation has happened, as Redge just pointed out, started in 2001. That was a separate incident. But the latest one that we are talking about is said to have happened over a period of 6 years. And the Competition Commission says because the activities were international, it's difficult to tell the extent of the damage. Firstly, do you buy that? And is it possible to estimate the extent of monies involved and, of course, the setback that it caused to the South African economy?
Look, this conduct is patently criminal, and it is not sufficient for the South African Reserve Bank, particularly the governor, to have had a cop-out he had in terms of saying that, well, there is not much else that the Reserve Bank can do beyond what the Competition Commission is doing. And I want to assert that the South African Reserve Bank, and specifically the governor, have got vicarious liability for their failure and or refusal to put in place measures to avert and to stamp out this criminal conduct, effectively of undermining the integrity of the South African financial system as well as the monetary policy of the country. And there's a number of remedies that I think that certainly should be considered, and those can only be brought about by either organized business or civil society. And civil society in terms of even getting a declarata to declare the cop-out by the South African Reserve Bank as being unconstitutional and therefore having to be, to be declared to be unconstitutional as it goes against the mandate of the Reserve Bank, but also the offending banks. They are banks that are alleged and having confessed to this criminal conduct. Under our legal system, under our courts, under our criminal justice system, there's very little that can be done because Parliament has failed the people of this country, notwithstanding that this criminal conduct extends well over 20 years. and that the only recourse I see at this point in time is that of pursuing both criminal charges in the United States courts, as well as punitive sanctions in terms of hefty penalties, and criminal charges against the CEOs as well as the traders, the currency traders who are guilty of this criminal conduct of currency manipulation. And the United States courts will have jurisdiction because the currency manipulation undermined not only the South African rand, but also undermined the US currency. And in so doing, the United States has been progressive in having promulgated due legislation to criminalize this type of conduct. And therefore, hence I'm saying the US courts will have jurisdiction and criminal charges must be pursued. It's not sufficient what the Reserve Bank is telling the nation.
So, Tshepo, who should lead the charge there, one? And two, you say this is a cop-out by the South African Reserve Bank. Please explain that.
Well, the Constitution of the Republic stipulates that one of the key mandates of the South African Reserve Bank is to protect the currency. Protection of the value of the currency, among others, ensures that there's no artificial or sinister manipulation, effectively, of the currency to the detriment of the value of the currency, as well as, of course, to the economy of South Africa. So that mandate sits with the governor, and the governor cannot just say, well, there is very little else that I can do, because all the banking institutions, by the way, including currency trading, they are operating out of franchise granted by the South African Reserve Bank, because the South African Reserve Bank is the one that has got the sole mandate for creation of currency. And then they have got what they call the agents, authorized dealers. Those authorized dealers would not be in a position. You and I cannot trade in currency unless so licensed by the South African Reserve Bank. And hence I'm saying that the South African Reserve Bank itself carries vicarious liability for this conduct that has demonstrably damaged the economy of South Africa, has undermined South Africa's financial system, and has really resulted in the devaluing, the consistent devaluing, as well as the volatility of the South African currency, which in turn has resulted in lackluster foreign investment. So therefore, they are as liable as this banking cartel that has been guilty or found guilty of this criminal conduct. And I think that as much as the Competition Commission is limited or constrained from acting against the South African Reserve Bank, but civil society in South Africa certainly has to take due interest and institute and seek a declarata in the courts in South Africa, but also add the South African Reserve Bank as well as the governor, based on his conduct, add him to the list as of those that stands to be criminally charged and persecuted in the courts in the United States.
Just coming back to government silence on this matter, Reg, that has been baffling for many watching on. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula said that he's expecting the finance ministers to explain the situation to the country and not issue a statement in this regard. But is it only the National Treasury's responsibility? And also, what is the responsibility, once again, of an institution like the Reserve Bank and also the Financial Sector Conduct Authority in this regard? What should they be saying at this stage?
The Secretary General of the ANC is correct in wondering why the government is silent, especially the Treasury. And indeed, they should be speaking up. Remember, the buck stops with the Department of Finance as the custodian of financial affairs in this country. The Reserve Bank essentially, even if independent, operates under the Reserve Bank. So the Reserve Bank operates under the Department of Finance. Therefore, it cannot be a case where the department charged with financial affairs of this nature is silent and is unable to give us detailed information around what happened in both 2001 and later events. Remember, the Reserve Bank is the only institution that is charged with monitoring the foreign exchange market. This foreign exchange market is divided into two areas, the onshore market and the offshore market. The onshore market is where the Reserve Bank has got significant jurisdiction, can monitor so easily. Insofar as some of the activities happened onshore, frankly, the Reserve Bank has to tell us. Now, what about the offshore? The offshore also, while obviously difficult, slightly difficult for the Reserve Bank to monitor, can easily be monitored if the Reserve Bank so wishes. It has significant instruments, and in fact, economic literature tells us we can actually, as a country, ensure that even the activities that happens in London or New York be monitored by us as a country. Therefore, for the Reserve Bank to come and tell us it is the duty of the DTI's Competition Commission is quite, in my view, shocking. And the Reserve Bank governor and the Reserve Bank as a whole must be taken to task as a matter of great agency. It is precisely the job of the Reserve Bank to monitor prices. And the rand exchange rate is the primary price in this country. And therefore, there's so responsibility given the mandate, the primary mandate that the Reserve Bank has. And to have to tell us, or tell us minimally that DTI and its Competition Commission are the ones supposed to do this work, is indeed not just shocking, but I think undermining not just the rest of the country, but even scholars who understand this issue of banking. But also, Sakina, banking is a public good, just like a road and water, all right? These banks operate under the mercy of the country as a whole. And for the Minister of Finance at some point in time, Mr. Nene, saying we're going to undermine the confidence of the banking system is not only frustrating, but a show of ignorance in the issue or the issues of money and banking. I'm not surprised. The Reserve Bank is exceptionally incompetent in regard to the very mandate that they're supposed to discharge, banking and money. They don't understand this banking, they don't understand money, yet they're given this task. That's why we find the Reserve Bank governor and many of people, including the minister himself, wondering what to do next. And we're actually left to wonder, who then should we go to? Right. Well, obviously the Reserve Bank does account to Parliament, and of course they have to be pushed right to the Parliament to account. But at the end of the day, at executive level, it is the Minister of Finance and indeed the governor himself and the other supporting deputy governors. They must account, and they're the ones responsible primarily for this task. And we're being thrown right here into the mess macroeconomically by the Reserve Bank and the Treasury. They want to be playing to the gallery of the banks. Why? I do not know, when banks really operate under the mercy of the government.
Tshepo, we're out of time, but I quickly just want to hear from you. This happened in 2001, and we heard former President Thabo Mbeki among those who are speaking out, calling for tough action. But is it because the banks got away with it lightly back then that they were perhaps emboldened to do it again? And also, how were they able to do this? How were they able to just gain control of a situation and manipulate the currency for that period of time?
Well, indeed, the banking cartel are repeat offenders who are unrepentant. It matters not that there was the Rent Commission. It matters not that 15 years ago, the Competition Commission already started investigating these practices. It is not the first time that they have paid fines for currency manipulation, but it has been such a profitable criminal enterprise with no consequence whatsoever upon them that they are bound to continue repeating this until such time that the South African Reserve Bank can do what it is constitutionally charged to do, and that will be to revoke the currency trading licenses of these guilty banks that are repeat offenders. But also Parliament must urgently promulgate punitive legislation which must carry hefty prison sentences for those that are guilty of this type of economic sabotage crimes. Because unless we do that, we are going to see a repeat of this. But when Parliament will be able to do that and put in place such a legislation is anybody's guess. And hence, I'm strongly advocating for both criminal as well as civil litigation in the U.S. courts because of the jurisdiction founded on the basis that the U.S. dollar was involved in this criminality. And those are really the things that I think must be done urgently and in the short term. But the Reserve Bank must act. Failure to act, there must be an application in the courts in the form of the course of action of mandamus to compel the Reserve Bank to have to act against the banking cartel. And as I say, must be to revoke the licenses of the guilty since they are not the first-time offenders.
Okay. Gentlemen, unfortunately, that's where we have to leave it this morning. Thank you so much for your time. Economic and energy analyst Tshepo Kgadima and Redge Nkosi, Executive Director and Head of Research for Money, Banking and Macroeconomics at First Money, discussing the ongoing issue of bank currency manipulation. And the matter seems to be simply refusing to die down as more pressure continues to mount for the government to communicate a clear message about the damage and also the action to be taken against the banks that were involved in the currency manipulation.